In India, the principal problem is the flat-out denial that Islam played a destructive role that started almost immediately after the death of the Prophet, when a first Islamic army tried to reach India by sea, but was repelled. Then several armies were sent from the Caliphate towards India overland, but each of them got defeated. And so the Caliph in Damascus suspended these expeditions for a while because he thought that too many Muslim soldiers got killed in the process. But then ultimately Muhammad bin Qasim in 712 endeavored to conquer a part of India, of present-day Sindh. And immediately it started with the great massacre of Hindus and a great destruction of Hindu temples. This was in wartime circumstances. You see, after he established his power, things went back to relatively normal, but under Muslim domination, it was very difficult, in many places impossible, to rebuild Hindu temples or to utter Hinduism in public. The next name, because we have to, of course, skip over a number of events, but the next important name that most of you would know is Mahmud Ghaznavi, who made a number of expeditions into India around the year 1000, and who massacred many Hindus, and who destroyed many important temples, including the Somnath temple in Gujarat. For the first time, 8 times later, it was again rebuilt and destroyed again, rebuilt and destroyed again. He also destroyed the Krishna Janmabhoomi temple complex in Mathura. And I cite this event because it also provides the first major case of negationism, one that set the precedent for the whole movement. In his book on the history of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, wrote about Mahmud Ghaznavi, and hinting at the events in Mathura, he wrote that architecture interested Mahmud Ghaznavi. Well, this is true. Before the destruction of the temple complex in Mathura, Mahmud Ghaznavi held a speech in which he praised to the sky the temples he saw before him. He said, you see, this is a very beautiful temple complex, and the angels could not have built it in 1,000 years. These walls are as firm as the faith of the faithful. But you see, after praising this architecture, he then gave orders to destroy everything. And that, of course, Nehru doesn't say. Now, of course, he suspects many of his readers to know the facts. So he adds something else that, you see, if they at all raise the objection that Mahmud Ghaznavi destroyed the Hindu temple complex, then you see he has an answer ready. He says that Mahmud Ghaznavi was a Mohammedan, that's how he writes it, was a Muslim, but that was just by the way. He was a soldier, and a brilliant soldier. So what he's saying is, okay, if you insist, yeah, maybe he destroyed a few temples, but that was not because he was a Muslim, that was because he had a military temperament, he did things violently. So there you have two forms of negationism, simply flat out denying that events happened, and secondly, okay, admitting that the events happened, but blaming them on something else than on Islam. Now, Islam has a whole theology of temple destruction. it very much classifies the infidels, the non-Muslims, as enemies. And of course these enemies in peacetime, if they submit, if they pay the jizya, the so-called toleration tax, if they satisfy a number of conditions, they may be tolerated in a subordinate position. But you see, on occasion, when some conflict arises, they are to be treated as enemies. So this theology of destruction has led to the implementation of this theology, namely the effective destruction. As you know, all the suicide terrorists these days say explicitly in their last will or in the farewell videos that they have recorded just before they commit their act, they say explicitly that they do it because of Islam. For example, Muhammad Atta of 9/11 fame said very explicitly that it is Islam that motivated him. Or Mohammed Bouyeri, who killed the film director Theo van Gogh in Amsterdam in 2004, says explicitly that he did it because of Islam. Now, a number of people in India, they are called secularists, following the precedent of Jawaharlal Nehru, deny this. Whatever the Muslims say, we know it all better. No, it was not because of Islam that they did it. It was because of poverty or because of anti-colonial feelings. You know, some extraneous reason is invented and Islam is denied as a factor of violence. Another character who is important is the nephew of Mahmud Ghaznavi. He entered India, he managed to get a foothold inside India, and in 1033 he entered into battle against Sukadeva and, among others, Raja Bhoja. There was a coalition of Hindu Maharajas, and they defeated him. So then India was free from the Islamic danger for the next 150 years. Perhaps the Hindus of those days thought Islam was a problem of the past, because they kind of enjoy smugness and sleepwalking and so on. So they thought that this danger had passed. And so they were quite unprepared when Muhammad Ghori came on the scene. In fact, it was worse than that. One Hindu king, Jayachandra, made an alliance with Muhammad Ghori against another Hindu king, Prithviraj Chauhan. So in a way, you see, it is Hindus who brought the Muslim armies into India. And then at first Muhammad Ghori was defeated, but he came back, and then he defeated Prithviraj, and he had no mercy. And then the great destruction starts. Now, this is 1192. In 1194, the Muslim armies go all through the Ganga Valley, and they destroy, among other things, the Buddhist establishments, like the Nalanda University, which burned for weeks. This is probably also when the temple on the site of the Ram Janmabhoomi was destroyed. I have my quarrels about it with some other with Hindu historians, with other historians, who say that this temple was destroyed by Babar. You know, this was probably destroyed earlier. Anyway. So then the period of the Delhi Sultanate starts, which is a very, very destructive age. But fortunately for the Hindus, there was a lot of infighting between the Muslims, so they could not use all their energies against the infidels. And that is why Hinduism has survived. But it was a very destructive regime, which ended in 1526 with the entry of the Mughal dynasty. Now that also initially was very anti-Hindu. Of Babar also, many massacres of Hindus are known. heaps of or pyramids of Hindu heads. But under Akbar, his grandson, at least a certain compromise with the Hindu population was reached. And so then, for about 200 years, the situation was bearable for the Hindus. They even got the right to rebuild their temples. And the Mughal Empire could flourish and become a rich empire, mostly because of this compromise. You see, otherwise, the Muslim regime always had to reckon with Hindu rebellions. It was very unstable, whereas now you got a compromise that could last, that could hold out for 200 years. Then, unfortunately, his great-grandson Aurangzeb got religion. He was more Muslim than emperor. The others had been more emperor than Muslim. They wanted to enjoy their empire and put Islam between brackets. But this man took Islam seriously. So he reintroduced this toleration tax. He reintroduced a number of prohibitions on Hinduism. And he gave the orders to destroy all the Hindu temples. And so effectively thousands of temples were destroyed. Now, that sounded the death knell, ultimately, of Muslim power in India, because by then Hindus had got their act together, and mainly in the character of Shivaji, they rose and they conquered a sizable Hindu empire. And later also they conquered a large part of the Mughal Empire without dismantling the Mughal Empire, but they became the effective power in the Mughal Empire. The Marathas, that is. And then the Sikhs conquered their kingdom, the Jats and so on. So it was a very bad time for Muslim power, a time of Muslim retreat. And then you get the first so-called fundamentalists like Shah Waliullah, who preach a return to true Islam as the key to restoring Muslim political power. Then the British come on the scene, and then the whole picture changes. Until then, Hindus had from experience a very negative image of Islam and of Muslim power.